Ilhan Omar named in shocking new claim. Oh my God.
Now to the Trump administration's war on fraud, which could also come up in today's press briefing with the vice president and fraud czar, J.D. Vance. The convicted mastermind behind Minnesota's Feeding Our Future $250 million fraud scheme is set to be sentenced this week.
Good.
The Justice Department wants Amy Bach to spend 50 years behind bars, saying this, that she, quote, took advantage of a once-in-a-century global pandemic.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. This
like
is
the sound of
Outnumbered.
that.
I'm Emily Compagno, here with my co-host, Kaylee McEnany, and also joining us today, Cheryl Casoni, Fox Business anchor and host of American Dream Home, Kennedy, the host of the Kennedys, Clarence Thomas. Now, the mastermind's defense team says that she should get credit for handing over documents that helped convict her co-conspirators. They're hoping for about 3 years in jail. Before she was convicted, Amy Bach told Fox News that state officials like Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison probably knew what was going on the whole time.
Of course they did.
I have to believe that the governor's office and Keith Ellison's office were aware of this. They've said they were involved in helping the FBI. They've said they were made aware. But apparently I'm scary, so they couldn't do anything. I don't know. I have to believe they were aware. And again, if they weren't,
I bet they were.
Shame on them for having a system that their lower level staff don't bring something of this level to their attention.
They knew it.
Now, Bach has also implicated Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, whose name appeared in emails and texts during her trial. Bach tells the New York Post that she, quote, struggles to believe that Omar didn't know what was happening in her district.
I feel like it's so obvious that she knew. It's so obvious. Like, I mean, really, what are we doing?
She told Fox something similar. Watch.
I don't know what she knew. I don't know. I know that I was duped by a number of people. We also have seen videos of Safari Restaurant giving out thousands of meals, pallets and pallets of food being distributed. Was there fraud? According to the DOJ and the FBI, yes. According to the jury verdict, yes. But how much?
A lot.
And why don't we know that? There's just so many holes and gaps in these cases. Ilhan Omar visited those sites. Why didn't the FBI?
Good question.
John, I feel like rarely do we get so many statements coming out of a defendant's mouth, right?
That's
and this is really interesting that she's
out.
essentially saying that part of the prosecution's case against the whole institution writ large, which is new or should have known. But here it seems like there's a lot of known. What is your take on both sides of this issue here that she faces in court?
For sure, she's trying to get a lower sentence, so she's trying to cooperate with the government.
Yep, she's snitching.
And the prosecutors should be taking advantage of this to see if this is a broader conspiracy. It seems hard to believe that $250 million were stolen by the federal government.
And nobody even knew.
No one else knew about it in Minneapolis.
Bullshit.
That's one. Second, as I learned on Kaylee's show last weekend, some of this money has possibly ended up in the hands of terrorist groups in Somalia. If that's true, this is not just Medicare, Medicaid fraud. This is a counterterrorism investigation with much higher sentences and much longer time, much more money involved, much greater powers on the part of the government to...
No, I mean, it's obviously what's going on. I mean, you could easily say that. It's so fucking clear.
Investigate and surveil. But the last and I think most important thing is people like the governor of Minnesota and the attorney general who are elected to protect us don't have immunity from this kind of prosecution.
They do not.
So I think the Justice Department should be investigating Governor Walz and the attorney general to see how many times did they meet with these people? How much money did they receive in campaign donations? Did they lay off this conspiracy to allow it to move forward and benefit politically, which would make them potentially co-conspirators in a counterterrorism investigation? And they need to be held accountable.
Co-conspirators in a counterterrorism. See, I like this guy. This is good.
Not just them saying, oh, we eventually cooperated with the federal government when we investigated this. Were they involved in it from the beginning?
Such great questions, because the money flow, Kaylee, indeed, it went even to Somaliland. I mean, the ability for the government thus far to
It didn't go to Somaliland, went to Somalia, as far as I know. There's two separate countries. Somaliland seems to be the separatist movement that is more reasonable, and Somalia is the PvP server.
the funds has been robust and substantial and totally illustrates potential culpability. We've been talking about, or I've been saying that I was hoping for some type of criminal liability here because this exceeds the standard of negligence so greatly, and there is zero immunity that they can enjoy in their offices because none of this was within the bounds of official duty capacities. This is all fraud and misconduct and breach of duties. There is nothing about this that has to do with policy.
Yes, and it's bigger than Feeding Our Futures. In fact, it goes back to 2019. That's before Feeding Our Futures with a whistleblower report, an investigator. That investigator sounded the alarm. It was his job to investigate things like this. His entire unit sounded the alarm, saying it's a near certainty that at least a percentage of the fraud proceeds in Minnesota go overseas and are being siphoned off to one or more designated terrorist organizations. So to the point that
somebody needs to get in trouble for this. And I'm talking about serious trouble. You're talking about having money get reallocated to literal terrorism.
Professor Yu's making, if I'm Tim Walz and an investigator in my government, who, by the way, his unit ended up being shut down. Why? I would listen to that. I would pull him into my office. I would find out about that money and ask, why and how is this going overseas to terrorists? I agree with Professor Yu, and he presented this theory to me for the first time. That if you're aiding and abetting terrorists, this could be terrorism charge. This is a big deal. But state actors is where I'm looking at for prosecutions at this point. These fraudsters, it's like playing whack-a-mole. You hit one fraudster, another one pops up. You hit one, another pops up. You need to look at what state actors knew. And that's something immediately when I presented John Yu's legal theory to the vice president, he said, I'm going to go to DOJ. I'm going to take that there. They should be looking at this. Of course, the facts match the law. That's DOJ's call, not the executive branch's call. Nevertheless, we need to look at it. And finally, I would just say this. Gavin Newsom, too. I mean, going back to 2022, he was warned about hospice fraud. What did he do? He put a moratorium on hospice. He shut down 287 hospices, but that was over 4 years. J.D. Vance has shut down 800 hospices in 2 months. So what was Newsom doing? Why were they sitting?
It's engineered. It's on
this information.
All this is
Why
designed.
were governors enabling fraud? And I would just note Newsom hit back at J.D. Vance this weekend saying JD's lying in the fight against fraud. We've walked the walk. You've walked the walk? Then why'd you do a fourth of the work that the Trump administration has done over a 4-year period they have done in 60 days? You're not walking the walk. You're playing catch up.
And there have been zero.
No, they did the minimum requisite for them to say that they did something, and then they let the rest of it go because you're always going to have casualties, right? And so, at a certain point, they have to sacrifice some of them because it's getting to be too obvious or too problematic. But that doesn't mean that the existing system is removed. It just means that they did enough to placate people that are critical of them. That's it.
Complaints or resistance from those 800 organizations shut down because indeed they were fraudulent. Now, you talked about Gavin Newsom's always over chatty response, but Governor Walz hasn't responded to J.D. Vance. Now, the vice president said he hasn't heard from him at all about the fraud probe. And remember, though, the governor took credit somehow for the fraud probe and the results that were uncovered. Let's watch.
No, Tim Walz has not contacted me. I did see that he took credit when we did those 22 subpoenas that I mentioned, that the investigations that we're doing for the anti-fraud stuff in Minneapolis. Tim Walz did take credit for it, even though Tim Walz has not helped us at all. We've gotten some cooperation from local authorities, but from the governor's office, we really haven't gotten that cooperation.
So he takes credit, by the way, after he calls the journalist, however, a white supremacist. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so Tim Walz and Gavin Newsom both personally attacked Nick Shirley and doxed him and tried to do whatever they could to get their unhinged supporters to go after him, putting his safety at risk. But what I'm most curious about, I can't stand slimy politicians. And I put Governors Walz and Newsom in that category because it's only when it has to do with self-preservation and further ascending the political ladder do they actually jump into action. They're not public servants. They're personally serving their own needs and ambitions. And, Tim Walz, and we've heard this from whistleblowers, he and his office were shutting down anyone who was bringing the fraud to the attention of the state government. And there were plenty of people who were like, this is not right. There were those of us covering some of the PPP loans in real time during COVID saying, this is ripe for corruption. There are plenty of people out here because these are
designed intentionally for that. Done on purpose.
These are vetted so flimsily that they're going to take advantage of this. And it's very interesting that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, she was the one who authored and pushed the Meals Act in 2020, which allowed for a way lower threshold of, trying to figure out and codify who was getting the money from the federal government to give out meals to kids and families in need. So they didn't have to have any verification after her federal legislation. So it's like, I would also like to know from her, when did this become your pet project?
I was on this.
It's their pet project because it's how they funnel people to their demographic. These people, and this is one thing that you have to understand, is that a lot of these people that come in they don't have the same American values that, you're supposed to have. These are people who are looking to take advantage of American systems and then use them to benefit people of their ethnicity or their race. That is their primary goal. Everything else is in service of that larger goal. They're not Americans. I don't care if they have a passport. I don't care if they have residence. I don't care if they're a citizen. They're not Americans. And everybody knows it.
Show in the middle
Especially
of the pandemic
them.
from my home studio when we were all at home, when I got the alert that my identity had been stolen for a PPP loan fraud. I mean, it was absolutely rampant. Now, Cheryl, Kennedy talked about Ilhan Omar, and let's talk about her disclosure forms, her financial disclosure forms for a second. We're going to pull up that information so that we can get from you the analysis of her economics. Here's the breakdown of her 2024 financial disclosure. It went from an estimate between $6 and $30 million, way down somewhere between $18,000 and $95,000 when a lot of eyebrows were raised about how much she had. And look, you have to wonder, we're just alleging here, we're just brainstorming,
Sure.
but the nexus between changing her mind about the threshold of the financial disclosure and all of a sudden being a multi-millionaire, I guess you have to get to Congress first before you can get rich.
Yeah, you mean they shouldn't be trading stocks? That's a whole nother.
I don't think that's what happened. I think that there was something that was a lot dirtier that happened. And I think that if you really investigate this and do an audit into it, you're going to immediately figure it out. I don't even think that they did a good job hiding it. I think that you could probably, if you gave the autists and Doge this case, I bet they'd figure it out in a day. Straight up. It would be that fast.
Conversation, but a couple of things here. One of the things that I love that J.D. Vance said, the vice president, he said, look, he goes, my family back in the day, we needed these programs. These programs, there are people in need that actually need food through SNAP. They need hospice care. They need funding through Medicaid. They're getting lost in all this, and I think that's heartbreaking. At the same time, John, you mentioned the $250 million. It's looking like it's in the billions. You need a forensic accountant to go through to try to trace all the money. There are ways to do it.
It's super easy.
Some of the things that they have found, and this is first from Feeding Our Future. Okay, you inflate attendance sheets for meal distribution, fake invoices, fake food purchase receipts, multiple businesses. You talked about that with the vice president. You shut those down. That's one thing. The autism services, there are people that do need autism services, but this is money that's taken right out of Medicaid, fake signatures, therapy never delivered, kickbacks that were being given out to certain families. I mean, the fraud, but you can use technology and you can't, again, use forensic accounting to get to that money. The problem with it, and we've been asked this on the Business Network, can we get the money back? Can the American taxpayer recover a clawback of what has been lost in Minnesota? Likely no.
No, we're not getting the money back. The best that we can do is we can seize all their assets and send them back to wherever they came from. That's what I would do. Seize their assets, denaturalize them, take everything they have, send them back with the shoes on their feet. And they should be happy they're getting to go back. They should be. A lot of people would want worse. I'm a reasonable guy.
Because most of that money, if it wasn't put on in bags of cash on planes back to Somalia, which there is, of course, reporting on that, unfortunately, it's been moved over to crypto and property, African property. So that money likely is gone. And I think that's the biggest heartbreak of all of this. Going back to the COVID pandemic, the PPP loans, we saw massive fraud in that. We get through that. Now we're hit with Minnesota. And now the next step of this is going to be California. And the California fraud is likely just as large as what we found in Minnesota, financially speaking anyway.
The second gut punch to me for this is that not only is there not recompense to the taxpayer, as you're saying, but we've already absorbed higher taxes to cover all of those budgets to begin with. So the American taxpayer is essentially being penalized twice. Once when they paid for all the fraud to begin with, and then again when they don't get the money back. Final thoughts, Professor?
Well, I think that this is an example of why we have a huge budget deficit like you're talking about. We had rampant spending because of COVID, as Kennedy's talking about, a lot of fraud built in, but they were throwing money at helicopters, but they never brought the budget deficit back down, and we haven't devoted enough resources to enforcement. And so what this all shows is that, yes, maybe we allowed things to get loose, but we've got to crack down now and get the people who stole money from the taxpayer. I mean, this is what's happening. This is one city, Minneapolis, $250 million were stolen. Why don't we have J.D. Vance's task force go to California, New York, Illinois, places where, I hate to say it, but I bet the fraud was even larger there than in this one city in Minneapolis. And we're the taxpayers. This is our money, and now it's ending up in terrorist groups in Somalia. So I think that we should be spending more, I hate to say it, but more money for Justice Department lawyers and FBI agents to get to the bottom of this.
One quick point, we do have a ballpark estimate of how big this could be because one program, Medi-Cal, in California over a several-year period, 3 to 4 years, they estimate it could have lost $146 billion. One program, one state. This could be a $1 trillion fraud epidemic. Trillion.
And these are the people that want to tax some guy that makes like, $5 billion a year. Like they want to tax him an extra 10%. So like you get 500 million, but they have no problem spending 140 billion for some other bullshit. It was never about the billionaires. That's the thing, is that like if it was never about the money. It's about who the money's being taken from.
Be sure to like.
It's so annoying. And it's only a logical response unless you're in on it. Yeah, exactly. $140 billion. That's a lot of money. It is. That's a huge amount of money to just fucking waste out of nowhere. Oh, my God. And it's very, very annoying for me to see that. Fair share of theft. Yes, I know. It's real large fraud. It should pay for itself. Yeah, I know. And worst of all, Democrats don't seem to care. Well, they do care. They want to do it. Like, you don't understand is that this fraud is what subsidizes their voter base. See, their voter base doesn't have jobs in a lot of these cases. These people, they can't contribute anything to the economy. All they can do is rely on the government. That's the reason why the Democrats imported them in. It's so you keep these people continuously subservient to the government, so they have to keep voting for bigger government, and that way you have infinite voters forever. And so that's the entire strategy for it. That's the reason why people are playing along with this. So it's used to pay for riots and protests. Yeah, exactly. Are you retarded? Trump's pardoned so many fraudsters. Well, I mean, you clearly don't care about fraud. Yeah, I mean, like if you're talking about Trump pardoning fraudsters, do you really care about that? No, you don't. Because if you did, you wouldn't be trying to bring this up whenever I'm talking about this Minnesota fraud. No, the reason why you're saying that is that you want to weaponize my values of being against fraud against me so you can use it as a smokescreen for whenever the fraud is beneficial to you. I'm not going to even engage in that. This is very clearly a problem, and you trying to distract from it and bring up something else isn't going to work. Like, I know exactly what you're trying to do. It's obvious what you're trying to do. So it's just, I mean, again, like this is I'm going to pretend to be principled. I'm not. I don't give a fuck. Like, I know that you're not. You know, I know you're just playing this game. And why would I try to play into it? There's no reason to. Ban them? I already did. Yeah, problem solved. Don't worry about it. And rats are going to rant. Yeah, creating a false narrative to win an argument. Yeah, exactly. And it's an argument that they don't even believe in, right? And I think that's the main issue, is that they don't even believe in the argument to begin with. They just do it in order to try to shut down yours. And I think that's really the main issue that a lot of people would be annoyed by, right? At least to me, I would. I have an inoperable brain tumor. I can't get disability, but Somalians get millions. Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely fucking insane.